All right, everybody, welcome into this another edition here of the Southeastern Sports Network podcast as we head into week 4 of the college football season as the Lions is coming off of their first victory of the year, defeating Eastern Washington in Strawberry Stadium this past Saturday night and hosting the number 1 team in the country, the 2-time defending champions, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits, coming to Hammond for the second time, I think in the last, 11 years, guys? They came here, 12 years. They came here in 2012. So the Jackrabbits coming back to Hammond, a return trip in the future. So a great game for Southeastern fans to get a chance to see the program like South Dakota State coming into Hammond. And just want to welcome Mark Willoughby and Alan Waddell, our normal guests. We have a special guest coming up here in just a second to talk about this game. But guys, real quickly before we welcome in our special guest, just your take on a team like the Jackrabbits coming into Strawberry Stadium this Saturday. Mark, you go ahead and go first.
Well, it's not every day you get a chance to host the number 1 team in the country, back-to-back national champions. I think we've played in the last 4 national championship games, and it's a program that has reached program status, and they have been for some time now. They were great back in Division II, made a pretty seamless transition to Division I back in the early to mid-2000s and haven't looked back since, and they've consistently developed their program, adding facilities, upgrading. We were there in 2013 when it was still a grass field. The old stadium kind of had some character to it, and they've added onto that. And it's upwards of 20,000 now, and have the new indoor facility and doing things the right way to build a program. And of course, in a powerhouse conference like the Missouri Valley with North Dakota State in there and Northern Iowa, programs like that, Southern Illinois, as well as others. It's right now, it's the, obviously the premier conference in the all of FCS, and they're the premier program. We get them in Hammond, America, coming on Saturday night, and looking forward to it. Not sure any of us know what to expect, but it's going to be a fun time, and we're looking forward to it.
And Alan, your thoughts quickly about the Jackrabbits coming to Hammond?
Yeah, just excited. Obviously a fantastic program. We have a ton of respect for them. That's one of the teams that every Saturday you pay attention to what their score is, because, they've been number 1 for a while and back-to-back national champions. And, the investment they've made in football has been incredible. And they've seen that, translate on the field. They were great back in 2012, 2013 when we played those guys a couple of years. Zach Zenner at running back, and we had a really good team. But, man, since then they've really turned it up a notch. And excited to see just our guys on the field with them and see how we stack up against the premier program in FCS.
All right, that's I think that sums it up pretty well. It's now time to welcome in our special guest here, all the way from South Dakota, Tyler Merriam, the voice of the Jackrabbits. Tyler, thank you for being with us today. We really do appreciate it, and we're really looking forward, as we kind of talked there about getting you guys to Hammond. Hope you all looking forward to coming down.
Well, thank you, Robbie and Alan and Mark. And yeah, we're very excited. It's fun for those of us who were down there a decade ago to Hammond, America, as you said, to get to make a return trip. And we're looking forward to a quality non-conference game, because as we can certainly talk about, it's not easy for SDSU to get quality non-conference games. So it's a fun challenge for the weekend.
You guys are getting a pretty good dose of the Southland Conference, in the non-conferences. UIW made the trip to you guys a couple weeks ago, a team that has had a lot of success in the Southland over the last handful of years. Just talk about that game a little bit, so maybe the fans can have some connection to talking about the Jackrabbits playing a team out of the Southland, UIW. Just talk about that game a little bit, how that went between you two a couple weeks back.
Well, that was a game that SDSU coming off its opener at Oklahoma State, where they were competitive into the third quarter, and then the Cowboys pulled away and didn't really know what to expect, other than we knew it'd be another just frenetic tempoed offense the Jacks would see. And SDSU kind of scuffled along, left some points on the board, dropped a touchdown pass on the first drive, then missed a field goal. Next drive, after a kickoff where it was returned for a touchdown, they got called back, only got 3 points. So went into halftime up 7, gave up a long screen pass for a touchdown early in the third quarter, and it was 17 all, and didn't really know what would happen the rest of the way. And then SDSU settled in, really started to establish itself at the line of scrimmage, which is kind of what we thought might happen, but it took longer maybe than we anticipated, which is a credit to Incarnate Word. But the Jacks dominated the last 28 minutes of that game, held Incarnate Word to just 7 points after that initial touchdown in the third quarter, and ended up winning by 21. So the score was not indicative of the struggle it was into the third quarter. But Incarnate Word's a good football team, obviously, and to come away with a win when you win by 21 points against a good team and don't feel like you've played your best, that's a positive note, which it was for that Jackrabbit locker room.
Guys, off the topic of this game, just kind of a question for you, Tyler. You talk about South Dakota State's been a perennial program in FCS football for a long time. I mean, a long, long time. But, what you guys have done, I'd say over the last 5 or 6 years is really taken it to a different level, I think. And everyone knows North Dakota State. Well, now people are starting to know South Dakota State from a more national perspective. Yeah. With you guys, how well you've been playing, kind of dethroning the Bison a little bit. Talk about up there in the Dakotas, how, I know it always meant a ton, but talk about that Dakota marker game now a little bit and how that's changed a little bit, with you guys kind of being maybe the big guy for the last couple of years. Really, how has that really heated up that rivalry between the two schools even more?
Hard to imagine it getting much more heated, to be honest. But you guys talked a little bit about Division II. When SDSU and NDSU made the transition to Division I, we went as partners and really needed each other. And so that's where it started, because in Division II, NDSU was this dominant program, and the Jacks were an average program. SDSU had one playoff appearance in its entire Division II era, where NDSU was rattling off national championships during the 80s. So when it started, it was basically out of a need almost of the two schools, and then both ended up in the Missouri Valley, both made the playoffs early in their FCS tenure, and then NDSU simply exploded. SDSU was able to get into the playoffs, but it was always that big brother. No matter what SDSU did, NDSU was always a step better. There were multiple years the Jacks beat the Bison in the regular season, but NDSU would go on to win the national championship. And so you had this just unique rivalry. And then over the last few years, as you said, the tables have turned. SDSU has dominated the rivalry, winning over the Bison in the national championship game, among other things. So it's turned. It doesn't mean it can't turn back. We know that that's one of the top programs in the nation, but it's just so interesting in that when one of the two wins that national championship, it doesn't matter what the other does. You feel like you're second fiddle. SDSU lived that for a decade. NDSU's been living it for the last couple of years as well. It's an awesome game. It's a great rivalry. It's part of the reason why ESPN picked it as one of its two games on national TV out of the Valley this year, because of what it means, because these two brands have certainly grown on a national level.
Tyler, I want to ask you, Tyler, quickly.
Yeah.
One thing that we've certainly felt down here in the changing of the landscape of college football is, with the transfer portal. You look around, you look at our roster a few years ago, and we have a wide receiver at South Carolina, tight end at Oklahoma, defensive back at Minnesota, a cornerback at LSU. How has it affected you guys and the roster? I look at I know Coach Selfo has been very complimentary of your quarterback, Gronowski, who's had a fantastic career at South Dakota State. But I think it's certainly a testament to the program that guys like that are sticking around, because it feels like he's been playing for 10 years.
No, that's a great point. In fact, we talked a lot about it with Incarnate Word coming in a couple of weeks ago. The difference of the Cardinal roster had 40 first-year players and 30 were transfers. And for South Dakota State, it was 33 newcomers and 8 of them were transfers. And so it's just a completely different makeup. A lot of the kids that are recruited to SDSU do come in part for their academics. I mean, that's who you recruit. That's the nature of it. So the transfer portal, has it hurt on a couple of occasions? Yes, but as a whole, it hasn't hurt much. A case like Gronowski, he had some opportunities to go elsewhere. He's talked about that. That's well documented. He wanted to stay here because it meant something here. How much of that's culture? How much of that is the individuals who are recruited? And, it's the nature versus nurture thing, right? There's probably a variety of reasons for it, but there is something special here. And some of that's the area. You only have so many pro teams around here. You don't have one thing about Louisiana, I don't need to tell you guys this, you have so many different levels of college football. Well, here in South Dakota, you have 2 FCS programs, then you have Division II, and that's it. And so you don't have all these other things going on. It's a big, big deal here. It's why we're drawing 19,000 people for football games at SDSU. So the portal hasn't hurt SDSU almost at all, which we think eventually it will start to. I mean, you just have to be honest about it, but the Jacks have been lucky in that regard.
Mark?
Tyler, we'll drill down on our particular game here in a moment, but kind of want to get back to what we were talking about earlier with the rise of North Dakota State, South Dakota State out of Division II, and you've had some coattails. You're not the only schools in the Dakotas. You have North Dakota to the north of North Dakota State, South Dakota State, or University of South Dakota to the south of you guys. And, we've had a chance to play both of those programs as well. And we're starting to see those programs elevate as they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, in the Missouri Valley. Could you talk about just how the entire region has been uplifted in college football?
Well, there's no question. All 4 of those programs have been a national seed in the playoffs. And USD obviously was very highly seeded this past year, and really their only legitimate blemishes were to SDSU and NDSU along the way. Obviously, what the Bison and Jacks have done, North Dakota under Bubba Schweigert, I don't have to tell you guys, is a quality program. I think, again, it goes back to when this move first occurred with SDSU and NDSU going to Division I. There were a lot of people that were against it because they thought that you were going to suddenly recruit a different type of kid and sort of abandon the Dakotas. And instead, the opposite has happened, where individuals in these 2 states who maybe didn't have those opportunities previously have had them. And the other thing we've seen is that it's been proven that you can be successful at these institutions and go on to the pros and have great NFL careers. NDSU's had a number of them. For SDSU, Dallas Goedert, who's playing on Monday Night Football, the Eagles, and you look at Isaiah Davis with the Jets, and you look at Tucker Kraft with the Packers, and Chris Oladokin had a long tenure there with the Kansas City Chiefs on their roster. On down the line, Mason McCormick starting with the Steelers on the O-line. I think it's shown that there's a lot of talent in this area that just because there was a limited number of Division I opportunities weren't being found. And now all of a sudden they're having that opportunity, they're relishing in it, and every NFL team makes a trip through the Dakotas. Every team comes through to scout SDSU, NDSU, and certainly UND and USD as well because of how it's grown. So I think it's been a great thing for the states and great for those student athletes, particularly in the sport of football. And I think the proof's in the pudding when you look at the success those individuals have had professionally.
I would say it's great for FCS football in general, just simply because you have to have marquee names at the top of the division or the subdivision to have what you call legitimate playoffs. You have to have the Montanas over the years, before that Georgia Southern for a long time. Mm-hmm. All the Appalachian State, all those guys that have Marshall and Youngstown State, of course, they're still in FCS, but all those programs were really good. Some of them have moved on to FBS, but now it's your guys' turn. And real quickly, what I know we hear some chatter about possibly maybe jumping to FBS. Anything on that? Anything to that?
I mean, it gets talked about. It's much more of a discussion publicly up in Fargo and North Dakota State. They have some members of the media who are constantly beating that drum. To be honest, here at South Dakota State, the focus is just being the best that you can be, and that's what the talk is. And if an opportunity arises, I mean, certainly it will get considered, but I don't have any intel or any insight at this point. It's just right now, what's Bill Belichick say? The focus is Southeastern Louisiana. That's the focus, and we'll tackle things 1 week at a time.
And Tyler, real quick, before we get to this game, lastly, right now here in Hammond, there's an investment, and they're about to get a big football building built in the next couple of years. Some major to this stadium, and that investment wants to begin. We went there in 2013. Had a great facility, a storied stadium, a good place to watch a football game. Just talk about the improvement, the rise to another level, I guess you'd say, that SDSU has made. How do you correlate that for fans here in Hammond to say, hey, look, we invested and we got this? Talk about just the investment with the stadium and then the new facilities that you guys have made, how that has transpired into maybe leading to help with some of the success you guys are having on the field.
Well, Robbie, for starters, I think it's very admirable for you to compliment that facility. Coughlin Alumni Stadium was near and dear to my heart, but it was grass that was, using that term loosely, it was painted over dirt, and there was one grandstand. Like, using stadium as a term even was a little generous, but it had some character, and we loved it, but it was a huge step up, obviously. And so when you talk about first off, it was the facility on the north end of the stadium with the locker rooms, which was built and was being in use the last time Southeastern, SLU was up here. And then after that, it was the Sanford Jackrabbit Athletic Complex, which is our indoor facility, which has 100 yards of field turf in it, which is probably a much bigger deal here than it would be down there, simply because with the weather, you have to have that facility. There's no option. You can't have spring ball if you don't have something. And certainly when you get into November and December, it becomes an issue too. That was a huge step. And then overhauling the entire stadium. So you went to 19,000 plus seats with premium seating options and all these other things. It brought it to another level. And yes, you can recruit kids based on the personalities, and you can draw some kids in. Certainly SDSU was able to do that a decade ago, but it's so much easier when you have these state-of-the-art things to show off, and you want to give, again, the best experience possible to them. And so it's a little bit like the Field of Dreams thing, right? If you build it, they will come. And if you're a Southeastern Louisiana fan and you know what's coming from a facility standpoint, it can only help you. It can only make things grow as long as it's done the right way, which I know it is down there. It really can be a stepping stone. And SDSU doesn't get to that next level without a championship level stadium and without a championship level training facility. They didn't used to have that. It's kind of remarkable what they were able to accomplish before they had all these bells and whistles. And now they do, and they play in one of the best stadiums in the nation with one of the best indoor facilities in the nation, particularly at the FCS level. So it certainly has been a huge part of the overhaul. There's no question.
Tyler, do you remember the 13 game? We came up there.
Absolutely.
And that was a year. That was kind of the turning point for our program. We had been a really struggling program, and in 13 that kind of turned around. We were a national seed that year, and I think the South Dakota State game, we came up there and we lost. We turned the ball over a bunch of times, and we came up there, and when we left the stadium, we said, "Man, I think we're pretty good," And we ended up winning 10 in a row and got beat in the quarterfinals by New Hampshire. Had some injuries there. Was really a couple of plays away from going to Fargo Dome that year and taking on North Dakota State in the semis. But what do you remember about that game? Because that really was kind of the year that turned it around for us. We've been in the playoffs several times since then. Have had several playoff wins. Been on trips to Montana, James Madison. We've become a program that a lot of people in the country know, and it really started in that 2013 year.
Yeah, that was a heck of a ball game. Bennett, the quarterback, I remember, that was the big talk coming in, was what he was going to be able to do against the Jacks. And, of course, SDSU had this trio of veterans, Austin Sumner at quarterback, Zach Zenner at running back, Jason Schneider at wideout. And they'd had a heyday the year before down at Strawberry Stadium. And I remember Southeastern scored to take a substantial lead early in the third quarter, and then Zenner ripped off a 75-yard touchdown run that kind of turned everything around. And then a young man named Dallas Brown had interceptions on consecutive possessions to seal the game. And one of the things that stands out too, that was the Beef Bowl, which is the charm of South Dakota State and an ag school. We have the Beef Bowl. That's one of the big games, and it's always well attended, and it was a great atmosphere. And again, that was SDSU had back-to-back losing seasons in 10 and 11, and that trio I mentioned kind of helped send it to the next level. They got to the playoffs in 12, 13, and 14, but lost out in the first round, and then won a game, I should say, then lost in the second round. 15 lost in the first round. Then with the new stadium in 16, all of a sudden became a top 8 seed, and then things have kind of rolled ever since, where they've been a seed every year, but won. So it was a great game. It was entertaining as all get out, and quite frankly, felt like the Jacks were lucky to win that game. And as you said, we came away thinking Southeastern Louisiana is a pretty darn good football team, and they certainly backed it up the rest of the way.
All right, let's talk about this game a little bit. Mark, we'll start with you. Just, talk talking with Tyler a little bit about this Jackrabbit football team, and go ahead with your comments to him on this game coming up.
Well, Tyler, I know you guys, like I said, back-to-back national champions. You come in ranked number one. You did lose some players, some pieces from last year. I think you got 3 offensive returning starters, I think 5 on defense, but you still have an old roster. I know there's a bunch of seniors on this football team. You got a quarterback who's got experience. You got Tucker Large on defense. You've got your center back. Tell me how that's gone. I know you start off with Oklahoma State. It's hard to tell. I know it was probably some disappointment not making that game a little bit closer, because I know that's what you expect nowadays. But very respectable loss. Come back, big win over UIW. I don't really not discount Augustana, but I know how that goes, a D2 team, and they're local and that sort of thing. You just got to get it over with. But how was that transition gone, trying to get losing so much experience and bringing back a team that maybe retooling a little bit?
Well, just real quick on last year. Last year was so unique in that every game SDSU stepped on the field, you felt like they were at least 10 points better than who they were playing, which even 2 years ago when the Jacks won their first national championship, you felt like most games were going to be a grind, that you felt the Jacks were really good when they were at their peak, but the other teams they were playing could potentially match that. You felt last year, if SDSU played anywhere near its level of capability, they were going to dominate the football game. And they did. And it was just a very strange year in that regard, because it was one of the best teams in the FCS, maybe the best defense ever statistically. So this year's team, a lot of sixth-year seniors were lost, and that was part of why they were so good, was you had a dozen sixth-year kids. So you had, and a lot of them were NFL guys. So that's part of the reason they were so darn good. So there's a lot of skill here, but it's unproven in games coming into the year. So they're trying to feel themselves out a little bit. Like you said, you have the Dave Remington Award winner for the best center in college football in Gus Miller. You have the Walter Payton Award winner for the best overall player in Mark Gronowski. Amar Johnson's a very, very good running back, and he learned a lot from Isaiah Davis, who now is in the NFL, but he hasn't had his opportunity to truly shine. The wide receivers played behind twin brothers, the Yankees, who both had NFL opportunities. So it's just been a matter of trying to get it all together. And what I think is sort of interesting is they've won both their home games by 21 points. And yet in the first game, you felt like the defense was a little disappointing at times, even with how good UIW is offensively. Then last week, you feel like maybe the offense underperformed some and left some points on the board against a Division II team. And so you have this weird thing where they're 2-1. They haven't lost to a non-FBS team in over 2 seasons. And yet there is kind of this feeling among the fan base that there's a little disappointment that maybe they could be a little better. I think some of that's the feeling out. Like you said, they need to come together. It hasn't fully gelled yet. We've seen glimpses. We've seen moments they've been really, really good. The Oklahoma State game, they had a stretch where they didn't play very well, and then all of a sudden they forced 3 3-and-outs in a row against maybe the best offense in the Big 12 Conference. So they're capable. They just have to find their consistency. And what does that mean? It probably means this is a young team that hasn't quite gelled together. So it's coming. It's not there yet. And when you go on the road and it's not quite there yet, that can be concerning. And so that's certainly something that is worth keeping an eye on, is just watching this crew come together. It might come together on Saturday for this team, or it might be an absolute dogfight. We'll wait and see.
Alan?
So go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, one thing I've always admired about programs like South Dakota State is you know who you are. And, sometimes the names change, the jersey numbers change, but it still looks the same. I mean, is that for our fans, is that the recipe for this year? I mean, I know it's not the same guys, but does it look the same as far as what you're trying to do offensively and defensively with the new personnel? That's question one. And then kind of the follow-up is, I don't know. I mean, how often you guys, because you play at home all the time in the playoffs, how many, when was the last time you took a really long trip like this, where you had to come all the way to the South to take on another FCS opponent?
Well, of course, a couple of weeks ago, going to Oklahoma State, not quite as far south, but this will be 2 substantial, flights early in the year. Typically, there is a decent non-conference road trip. A lot of these guys played 2 years ago during that playoff run where they went to Villanova one week and Sacramento the next week and Montana the next week and kind of went all over the place. So about half the roster remembers that deal. But that certainly is part of this, the logistics of all of it. It is a long trip, and that does matter in some of this. There's no question. Going back to your first question about how this team performs and just their approach, there are a lot of similarities. Defensively, Jimmy Rogers was an all-conference linebacker at SDSU for John Stiglmeyer. Before Stig retired, Jimmy was his defensive coordinator, and now he's in his second year as head coach. The defensive philosophy is very much the same. They're going to rotate a ton of guys up front. They try to keep that defensive line as healthy and also as energetic as possible. They'll rotate a lot of guys. They rely heavily on Adam Bach, who's been playing middle linebacker seemingly since the Eisenhower administration for SDSU. And they don't take a lot of chances. They'll calculate their gambles and their blitzes, but their big thing is to force you to go the length of the field, and they really like their corners, Beanham and Humphrey. And so that's been very similar to what they've done in the past. Offensively, this program has really done a good job of tooling itself to the personnel they have. When they had Taryn Christian at quarterback, Dallas Goddard, the NFL tight end, and Jake Winnick, who played in the CFL at wideout, they were wide open, and they were no huddle at times, and they were trying to outscore teams. The last few years, they've shifted more to ball control, pound away, and using a lot of tight ends. When they're all healthy, they have 5 tight ends, and they'll play them all. And they have, I think it's 38 personnel groupings based on their tight ends, because sometimes they want to run 12 personnel with Alpers and Gormley, and sometimes they want to run 12 personnel with Brenner and Gannon. And so they have all these different personnel groupings because the tight ends are not lost or forgotten about at SDSU. They're actually drooled upon, if you can believe it. And so the offensive approach is still the line dominates. They want to run the football, but they will tool it some based upon who they have. Again, they used to be a lot more wide open, and you're going to see a lot of shotgun. They rarely go under center, but the goal is not to just get everything to the perimeter. They want to run through the A gap, and they want to beat you up front. They really relish that offensive.
Wrapping it up here with you, Tyler, a couple more real quickly, but you spoke about the new coach taking over for a legend up there, but you look at your program. What's the secondary? I mean, Coach Shelfo today spoke highly on your corners. The Lions have had struggles passing the football early on in the season. Just talk about your defensive back play and how that's gone through 3 weeks and what you expect out of them this Saturday.
Well, Dallas Beanham has garnered some NFL attention. The league is aware of him at one corner. He's long, he's athletic. He struggled a little in the first half on Saturday, and they challenged him, and he responded by having some of his most physical hits that I've seen him have. That's on top of being very athletic at one corner. And he's a veteran from Nebraska. The other corner is Colby Humphrey, who was at Northern Arizona, was a grad transfer in here. And from the first day he set foot on campus, he's amazed everybody with the way he's attacked. He was very aggressive and did a great job at Oklahoma State against some very, very talented wide receivers. And so they like those guys, and they're willing to leave them be out on an island, if you will. They'll give them a little help over the top, but they don't feel like they need to double anybody because of how good those two guys are. At safety, Tucker Large is an All-American candidate. He's undersized, but he's very quick and just always seems to find his nose in the football. Now, they've been a little dinged up at that position. Cale Reeder was an expected starter who hasn't played all year. Colby Herter was expected to be the third safety in that mix, and he didn't play the first 2 games and was finally able to play some last week against Augustana. So they've been fighting some injuries there. But they really do like their secondary. It's just a unique challenge because so many teams in the Valley, they have a receiver or two, but they're not nearly as versatile as some of these teams you've seen early in the year. And then the other part, too, that they've had a challenge with is just how up-tempo. Most teams aren't going no huddle because in the Valley, they tend to replicate the success. And so NDSU and SDSU, it's more of a grinding it out, slow down offense. Now, all of a sudden, Oklahoma State and UIW, they can't snap the ball fast enough. It feels like you're playing basketball on a fast break. And so that's been the other thing that secondary's been trying to deal with.
And Tyler, last one for me, I'll give it back to these guys. We had an athletic director here, Joel Erdman, who went to South Dakota State. I think he set the game up initially in 2012, but he always talked about Hobo Day up there at South Dakota State. Can you just describe that real quick to these Lion fans a little bit, what Hobo Day means to South Dakota State and what it's all about?
Well, Hobo Day is homecoming. It dates back more than 100 years, and essentially the gist of it is to have the student body look like hobos. And so part of the deal, which they still go through to this day, although it's not quite as passionately followed as it used to be, is there is the 1 month club, which means you are not allowed to shave for an entire month. And that is male and female. They used to give out awards for the worst beard and the best beard and the hairiest legs and all these things. You see pictures from the 40s and 50s and it's hysterical. Again, they're not quite as into it from the student body standpoint as that, but there's bums that carry around knapsacks that are dressed the part as part of the parade. And it's really something that, again, in South Dakota, you tend to be a little unique. We have beef bowls and we auction off pigs at halftime of basketball games with the Pork Classic. And then we have Hobo Day. So we're very unique and we're proud of our heritage and our agriculture around here. And that's one of the things is Hobo Day. And nobody outside of South Dakota really gets it, but it means a lot around here.
He loved it and spoke highly of it. Mark and Alan, your final question, Tyler.
Well, I remember the beef bowl. Having made the trip up there, and I think you guys all auctioned off a cow or a steer or something at halftime.
Yes, a couple of steers.
Like, as I recall, and I also remember the 40 flight of stairs rows to get from the press box to the bathroom. I had to stand in a line down below. So that new stadium, I know that press
47 rows, Mark. Not that I ever counted, but there were 47.
47, rows. Yeah. I know it was at least 40 because I think I got to 40 before I got to the bottom. But no, it was a great trip, and we're looking forward to going back up there as well, and certainly looking forward to having you guys down here on Saturday.
No, it's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, we're really excited for it too. And quality programs, it's always fun to get these together because, like you said, we had to play a Division II last week for a variety of circumstances, had a late scratch, and you're trying to find somebody that can fit in the schedule. To be able to play quality non-conference games like Incarnate Word, like Southeastern Louisiana, certainly gets me excited. I know it gets the fan base and certainly the coaches and the players as well.
Well, it does us down here as well because, like you said, it's not every day we get a chance to host the back-to-back national champions.
Well, hey, I just want to say real quick before we let you go, Tyler, look, y'all auction steers and stuff, but my hometown down here, we got an alligator in the middle of town. So, you know what? It's there's different cultures all across the country. Looking forward to seeing you guys down here and watching the Jackrabbits this week take on our Lions. And again, thank you for spending some time with us, man. This has been awesome. And look, I'll tell you this: we are certainly FCS junkies, and there's not a lot of those in South Louisiana because there's so much other football that goes on down here. But after saying that, we've really admired y'all's program and watching it from afar.
Well, certainly we appreciate that, and the same goes to you. I mean, obviously we've kept close eyes on things. I remember watching very closely the playoff game a couple of years ago against Idaho with Jason Eck, of course, because he had come from South Dakota State as offensive coordinator there, and so well aware of the program, excited to get back, and it should be a lot of fun this weekend.
Well, look, one quick stat, we talked about it this week, is we have had success under Coach Selfo in our stadium against non-conference FCS opponents. Moved to 7-1 this past week against Eastern Washington. Do have wins over Villanova, Jacksonville State, Idaho. I mean, we've played well at home. I mean, obviously this is our toughest challenge to date, but Coach Selfo has got his team ready to play when we play here at home against good teams.
Well, and all you have to do is look back to the last couple of weeks. I mean, Montana goes on the road and loses to North Dakota. And I know North Dakota is a very good program, but Montana's top 5 in the nation, loses on the road. NDSU should have lost to East Tennessee State. It's remarkable, the Bison rally, and give them all the credit in the world. But East Tennessee State had every chance to win that game. It's tough to win on the road against good teams, and SDSU will be reminded of that on Saturday. So I fully expect it to be a tremendous football game.
All right, that's Tyler Merriam, the voice of the Jackrabbits, giving us some time this evening, and we really do appreciate it. Safe travels to Hammond this weekend, and we'll be talking to you down the road on the weekend, and should be a great game. Thanks again.
No, thanks for having me down, Mark, and appreciate the time.
We'll catch up later in the week. Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah, we'll talk Eastern Washington and preview this game against Jackrabbits after this on the Southeastern Sports Network podcast. All right, welcome back. We want to thank our special guest. The voice of the Jackrabbits are coming on and talking about this game Saturday between South Dakota State and Southeastern Louisiana. Guys, we'll do a quick rewind and talk about the game this past weekend against Eastern Washington. The Lions get their first win of the season against the Eastern Washington Eagles, and a big FCS game. When the season all shakes out, I don't know how many games Eastern Washington's going to win. They have a very, very tough schedule, and they're kind of down this year, kind of seeing them. But so I don't know if that's going to hold a ton of weight nationally, but it is a good win. It adds to that D1 total of wins. You're obviously trying to get to 7 at least if you can't win the Southland Conference this season. So that's a huge thing for this program if they want to make a playoff berth without winning the league this year. So that's why it's important to have these games, and they were able to do that. And in a pretty impressive fashion, the way they just kind of dominated the second half, running the football physically against Eastern Washington. And, Alan says this all the time. I think he said on the broadcast, so I won't take his thunder. But, when a team knows you're going to run it at them and they still can't stop you, that's the most impressive thing there is, especially a team like Eastern Washington. Mark, just your take from the weekend.
Well, to me, if you're a football fan of any level, college football, pro football, FBS, SEC, no matter what brand it is, that was as good a football game as you're going to watch anywhere. And it was extremely well played. Very few penalties. I think there were 8 penalties total between both teams. I think both teams had 4 penalties. So it was clean. There were no fumbles, no interceptions, no special teams breakdowns. It was just good, solid football on both sides. Both teams moved the football at times. Both teams played pretty good defense at times. And it had a playoff type atmosphere, regardless of, their record coming in, their record last year, Southeastern's record last year and record coming in. It's a brand name program. These are 2 programs that have been in the playoffs recently. And you stand up and take notice anytime you can win a game like this. And I know they're maybe down a little bit, but they're not down that much. I mean, they're still pretty good. And, last year you look back, they were 4-7, but had 4 or 5 near misses in their conference, including Idaho was one of them, and a couple of others that got away from them right at the end. They returned pretty much everything. So they're not necessarily down. They just had a bad loss last week to a non-scholarship Drake team who's pretty good. But it was a great win. And as Alan mentioned it, you can take the football and bully your way the last 5 minutes of the game and run out the football or run out the game, handing the ball to the same guy every play, maybe just running to different sides of the field. Says a lot about the character and the quality of young men you have on your football team. And I know Coach Selfo was very excited and elated after the game. I heard him on a show tonight. Sounded very prideful of his team, and rightfully so. It was a tremendous win.
Well, I think you have to look at the win, for what it is, and this is what you have to look at. That's a good offense. I mean, the quarterback's really good. And Chisholm is as good a receiver as you're going to see all year. I mean, he's outstanding. I mean, he is a big-time wide receiver. So let's look at how you won. What do we have, Mark? 5 3-and-outs, 6 3-and-outs?
Yeah, 5. This is a team last year. I didn't actually look at the 3-and-outs last year. They ran 92 plays in 2023 in Cheney. Saturday night, they ran, I think, 57.
Right.
So you cut their plays. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, because we had got them off the field 5 3-and-outs, and
they scored 21.
They scored 21 points in the first half, and we held them to 3 in the second half. So look, the bottom line is, how did you win? Okay, they have a really good offense. You held them to 3 points in the second half. How did you win? We couldn't get anything going with the passing game. We said, hey, we're going to run it right at you, and we did it successfully over and over and over and over again, and kept it away from them. So look, it's all about trying to find ways to win. And look, right now, I think this team offensively has struggled to find an identity through the first 3 weeks. But right now, your identity is turning around and handing it to Antonio Martin. And he was outstanding for the 3rd week in a row, averaged over 5 yards in a carry. He carried the ball 10 consecutive times on the last drive. 10 consecutive times. And had 28 carries. It's been a long time since we had anybody with 28 carries. And whenever he's running the ball like that, Harlan Dixon is the perfect complement to him. And he had some big plays, explosive plays in the running game. Our offensive line was outstanding. Now, look, if we're going to compete on Saturday and if we're going to win the league, we got to throw the football better. Eli Sawyer has not played great the first 3 weeks. But I'm just call it like it is. He's missed some wide open receivers, and it's really kind of head scratching because we've seen this guy play very well, and we've seen him play very well in big games. I mean, when he beat UIW as a freshman, that was as good of a team as we've ever played. I mean, they were outstanding. That was a semifinal team. They were absolutely loaded, and he lit them up. So the guy has the ability to do it. Now, I think he struggled a lot a year ago with some injuries. In the whole playing time situation with going back and forth with quarterbacks. I don't know where his confidence is, but hopefully he can regain that magic because we have some good players on the outside, and the way we're running the football, there's going to be plays to be made down the field, and we got to be able to hit those.
Well, you mentioned it. The offensive line has played outstanding in all 3 games. I would say they played well against Tulane. They played very well against Southern Miss, played off the chart on Saturday against Eastern Washington, and they've protected well. Now, we've given up a couple of sacks. They've turned some guys loose. That happens every now and then. But by and large, Eli's had clean pockets. He's been able to step up in the pocket for whatever reason. And I don't know if it's, the transition from, Greg Stevens to Anthony Selfo, because it's a little bit of a different system. I mean, it's his take on things. And sometimes, when you have a transition, it just, some guys struggle in it. I don't know if that's part of it or not, but I know there are guys open. I know that he's missed some open receivers and he's missed some chances. He's thrown to the wrong receiver a few times. We're not beating up on him, but let's face it, this team.
Well, Mark, I think we're making these comments. We're making these comments because we know he's a good player.
Well, exactly, and the head scratcher is your leading receiver has fewer yards per catch than your leading running back. That's not supposed to happen that way. Your leading receiver should have over 10 yards a catch, and of course, our leading running back's almost 6 yards a carry. But that's the disconnect. We're not making anything downfield. The biggest plays we're getting are tunnel screens that go off for 20, 25 yards, or catch and runs. But anything vertically downfield, I don't think we've hit on one. So that's been an issue, and that's got to change this week, as you said, against just an outstanding South Dakota State defense. But make no mistake, this offensive line is playing well. I do want to single out some individuals. I know he won the co-offensive player of the week. Zane Hooper, who is an offensive guard, actually came here as a center, kind of plays center guard, but he's a backup at both positions. But they found a way to get him on the field, and he played as that extra 6th offensive lineman, almost like an H-back. Did play some left guard as well, and he just mauled people on Saturday night. You remember Jawan Rogers back in the day when he played that same position, that H-back role, and would just light people up. Well, that's Zane Hooper on Saturday night, and he was doing it from a guard position and an H-back position. And when you go back and watch the tape, and we'll have it rolling over this podcast, and you can see it. It was a sight to behold. So now all of a sudden, that becomes contagious. Now you got other guys that are trying to make plays. It's an athletic offensive line. Your both tackles can run, your guards can run, your center can get out, get to the next level. I think the running scheme is really, really good. And as you watch the Southeastern team play, it looks a lot kind of like the Saints, kind of doing a lot of the same schemes, and they're getting some seams and some cracks for a good running back like Antonio Martin to run through. We saw the big touchdown, the second touchdown run on Saturday that Harlan Dixon had, where we wiped everything down. Their defensive line slants toward the flow, and he cuts it back, and there's a hole big enough to drive 2 Mack trucks through for a touchdown. That's a schemed up play. That's nothing more than scheme. That's something they saw, and on the tendencies that Eastern Washington was doing, and gashed a long run. So that's one way to create explosives. It's not just the passing game, but if you get the passing game going on top of it, get the tight ends involved, get Jalen DiMaggio on track, Darius Lewis open downfield. You still got Errol Rogers, Brandon Hayes that are good receivers. This has a chance to be a really good football team.
Well, guys, when you watch
sorry about
that, the offensive line is the catalyst. It's what they start with. You're right. So I think that the identity, as Alan mentioned, has to be the running game, and they want to lean on that. And look, we'll see. We'll see what happens as we go forward with how the team continues to develop. Because 10 teams are going to see that, and they're going to scheme up for that. They probably saw it to some degree in the first two games. Eastern Washington, knew that was coming, but you've got to be able to, have a team be able to game plan you during the week, and then be able to be more diverse off of what you were doing to create confusion for them. And so that's going to be interesting to see how they do that.
Robbie, bottom line is you're not doing what you did Saturday to South Dakota State. Now, can we run the ball on them? I think so. I think we can run the ball on anybody. We ran the ball on Tulane.
We ran it on Tulane.
Their defensive line, but I don't think we're going to, sit there and just run it 10 consecutive times and pick up, yards after yards. I think we're going to have to be able to hit some plays in the explosive. You just heard their play-by-play guy talking about that they're going to really play a lot of man on the outside. We have got, if we're going to stay in the game and we're going to have a chance to win, we have got to hit some big plays in the passing game.
You got to win some battles, but the case in point is we moved the ball against Tulane. We ran the football, actually threw it well underneath. But when you can't stretch a field vertically, you've got to go. The problem is in college football, I know
it's hard to go 80.
Frank talked about it, several times. You can't go 8, 9, 10 plays all the time. It's impossible. You have to have a big play in there somewhere. And then when you get in a red zone, you got to have some creativity. But the field shrinks, and once the field shrinks, that's why it's so hard to score in the red zone. If you don't have options, you don't have a tight end, guys that can win 50-50 balls, quarterbacks can place the ball in a perfect spot for a receiver to go catch a fade route or fit a ball in a tight window, or you don't have a hammer at running back who can pound it between the tackles, although we do have one in Antonio Martin. It's hard to score in the red zone, especially against a good football team. And we were able to do that against Eastern Washington. They're not quite at the level of what we're going to face this week and what we saw at Tulane. And then, of course, Southern Miss, we just had some, that was more of a disappointment than anything else. But we've shown flashes, and I think this team's going to get on track. But I do want to talk about the defense before we go. A defensive side of football, man, I'm telling you, the defensive line right now and the way our guys are flying around with the football, defensive line, linebackers, and secondary is something to see.
Yeah, you got to give credit to Coach Tom Rinaldi and his defensive line and what he's doing. He's doing a good job in creating a lot of good moves for these guys to get the field and put pressure on the quarterback. So
I think if you take away 2014, Mark, right now, this might be our most athletic defense we've had.
I would honestly, I think we may be more athletic. Now they had some probably
14
a little bit more
serious,
physical.
Mark.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, pull up the tape and you watch. This team's pretty athletic. That team may have been a little bit more physical at certain spots. You had Drew Masita at linebacker, was a thumper. A.J. Bowen at 300 pounds that could move. And you had obviously Isaiah Corbett. Those were different animals. You had Harlan Miller as an NFL corner. You had some, I think, individual pieces on that team. But I think collectively,
this defense can run. Our defense.
This defensive line can run. And it's not just the first 4, it's 8 or 9 guys can get in and roll. And it's almost like like they're competing against each other so you can get to the ball quickest.
And Mark, I'll tell you, I'm down there.
Like bottle rockets, going off.
Look, Mark, I'm down there during the games. I'm down there during the games. Let me tell you something.
Bombs and rockets reference.
Let me tell y'all something.
You have to get you one there, Rob.
Caleb Proctor is as good a D lineman as we've had. He is everywhere. And 91 played incredible this week as well. But I'm telling you, Caleb Proctor, I knew he was a good player from Oak Grove. I don't know how we got him, to be honest with you. I don't know how Tech didn't sign him or Monroe or somebody from up there in North Louisiana. But I'm telling you right now, he's a different player from last year. And his body it's a good body. He's athletic, and he is out there with bad intentions. And he has played really well the first 3 weeks.
Well, he's the guy that probably in the old school way of doing it would have redshirted and would be in his second year playing as a redshirt sophomore because he's just now getting into what we call his man strength. He's probably 20, 21 years old now. When he got here, he was 17, 18 years old, and he's been here for 3 years. So all of a sudden, he's starting to mature. Instead of carrying 270, 280 that he carried last year, was a little bit doughy. Now it's a little bit more rocked up. He's lost some weight. He's stronger. He's more twitchy up front off the balls, get off. He's winning battles at the line of scrimmage. He's quicker.
I just use that reference of bad intentions. We got a couple of guys on the defense that are, they're trying to hit you. KK Reno is, he is looking to crush somebody when he's coming down trying to find to hit. Cameron Ford, bad intentions. I'm telling you, Coriel Pierce, bad intentions when he's coming downhill. This is a physical athletic defense.
The issue, you can't name one that doesn't. Warren Peoples, you said Caden Lewis. They moved Ahmad Bradley over there. He's kind of a little different body. He's 350 or whatever he is, but you can't move him. All right, so when he's in there, then you have Dorian Davis, who's a big body as well. Then you have Shamar Pearl. We haven't talked about him. He's 6'6". He's long. He's got length. Gets double teamed all the time. He's certainly active, and then Dante Daniel. We just got a bunch of them, and Tylen Cooper played well the other night at corner. And what about Kadrain Callaghan? Here's a guy at 6'1". I don't know how much he weighs, 215 or so at corner. Can run, physical out of the secondary. So there are no bad football players. We used to always talk about we had 2 or 3 really good players and a bunch of solid guys. And if we could ever get numbers on defense, we could have a really good defense. A defense that complements the type of offenses that we've had here. But right now, there are no bad players on defense. There are nobody you say, that guy can't play. And they're rolling guys off the bench. And we saw that the other night. McKinley came in and played well. Matter of fact, the final, the fourth down in the end zone that they overthrew, he had pretty good trail coverage on Efton Chisholm. Had to make him make a great throw, and he missed it. He's a backup, and he's in the football game at that point in time because Cameron Ford was out. So it's a fun defense to watch.
And look, it's infectious.
Go ahead.
It's infectious, Mark, too, because another point I wanted to make. I thought Styles Guidry set the tone for the game. Look, when I tell you, they reviewed it for targeting, if you remember, and the first play of the game, the opening kickoff, and the reason is because he came down there and blew somebody up at the 10-yard line. He's a freshman from Oak Forest Academy in Amy, and I'm just right now, this defense, this special team, they're trying to hit you. It kind of gives me an old school feel a little bit of, it's not just trying to, drag people down. They're trying to abuse you when they hit you.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like as a competition, like they're trying to, just trying to beat each other with the football and say who could win. And then what happens is one guy gets a TFL, one guy gets a chase from behind and retrace a route and come in and make a play. So the next guy's got to do it. Now all of a sudden they're rallying hats to the ball, and then there's no substitute for speed. And when you can run and you can, in other words, you can outrun leverage, or you can play certain techniques because you have guys that can run. Now all of a sudden you're a dangerous defense, and you look like 2014, which is the best defense in the modern era of Southeastern football by a long shot. And, again, I think statistically, because of the opponents we played, Tulane, it's got away from us in the second half. Southern Miss got some chunk yardage on some fluke plays. And you can even say a little bit of that the other night. But this defense, I think, as this season plays out, is going to put up some pretty salty numbers.
Guys, when you have a good defense, you're in every game. And we know that, and you're going to have a chance to – I'm talking about games at your level in the FCS. If you play good on defense, you're going to have a chance every single week. And so to that point, before we jump into the Jackrabbits a little bit, big win for the conference when you talk about the Lions beating Eastern Washington. But another big win was over in Beaumont. Lamar beats Weber State, trying to get some excitement about the Southland winning some non-conference games. And well, I tell you what, there's a long way to go and a lot of things can happen, but I point to that Southeastern Lamar game down the road as being a massive game. I bet I would put a future on it right now. That could be a massive game in the Southland as we get down the stretch between, two of the teams I think are, I pick Lamar, I've talked to you guys a lot, but I pick Lamar to be right there with Southeastern all year, the chance to win the league. And that's going to be a big one down the road for these two.
Well, they should be, and they had first of all, they're very well coached, and they know who, like Alan talked about with South Dakota State. They know who they are. I think Lamar knows who they are now under their new head coach, and he comes from up in the Northeast. He brings that mindset down here, which in the past, a few years, the state of Texas and really Louisiana, the South in general, is to spread them out, up tempo, let's throw it all over the park. High octane offense, not much defense, but you're seeing a transition in the Southland Conference. Let's look at it. Lamar is defense first, ball control, running game. Not a prolific offense, but they're good enough on defense to play that way. Nichols has been playing that way for the last several years. We're certainly playing that way now. I mean, I know we're trying to get the passing game on track, but right now we're a team that can play ball control offense. And shut down defense. I mean, I think we have a team that can play that way, especially as we get into conference play. And SFA is kind of trending that way a little bit. They're moving back into the league. Still don't know what McNeese is yet. So the top of our league, you're starting to see it evolve from what it has been. And I don't know if that's necessarily by design or if it's just the way it's worked out, but that's what we're seeing. So I agree with you, Robbie, about Lamar. And, Southeastern, if you look at the national pundits and, the people that like to talk about, the Southland and the national landscape, we're kind of the forgotten story right now. Nobody, especially getting off to an 0-2 start, coming off 3-8 last year. So nobody's talking about Southeastern, but I think that's going to change here in the next couple of weeks as we continue to play well and things start to get unwinded. And it's going to be a fun run in the Southland Conference.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough task to go against the Jackrabbits this weekend, but you got a really good chance to be, to finish off this non-conference slate well by playing well against the Jacks, having a chance to win. Hopefully you do, but going on the road and beating Tarleton, which is a winnable game for sure on the road, and then 2 winnable games, I think you got to go play well. You got to go play well against Commerce and Houston Christian. So got a chance to get off to a good start. So the Lions just couldn't do last year. They kind of had a tough non-conference season, obviously, but struggled in the ongoing part of the early part of the conference schedule, and just could never get on track. So got a chance to kind of reverse the script as we go into 2024. Guys, we'll wrap it up here tonight quickly, but Mark, your thoughts on this Jackrabbit team, what the Lions got to do to win?
Well, they're a great program. We know that coming in. They're going to be a chore. To come in here and play, and they're going to be a heavy favorite. I would imagine probably north of 2 touchdown favorite coming in by the odds makers, I would guess. But, Frank Selfo's shown the ability to do it before. And I think Saturday sparked something in this football team. I think there's a lot of belief. I don't think there was ever any doubt they were going to win that football game on Saturday among anybody on the sidelines or in the press box. And last year there would have been. And I think it's a different year. I think we're good enough up front on defense, and I think we can run well enough that I think we can, make them earn their keep on offense. The key is going to be, can we run the football? Can we sustain it? And can we make some plays downfield in the passing game? If we can do that, we can certainly make it competitive for 4 quarters, make it a game where there's a chance to win or a chance to at least keep it, within a fluke or something at the end to win. But you can't make mistakes. You can't turn the football over. You can't throw a pick six. You can't get a punt block or a kickoff run back for a touchdown. So you got to play clean. You can't have plays called back due to penalty or extend drives. But I think if we play clean and play well, it's a game that's going to make our fans and whether we win or lose, our fans are going to come out there feeling, hey, we got a good football team. We competed well.
Alan, your thoughts on this game against the Jackrabbits?
It's a great opportunity. Nobody's going to think we can win. Understandably. They've been dominant in FCS football. I think we're going to know early. This is my concern. When you play these teams from the north, they're just big. And what I mean by big is they're tall. They're 6'5", 6'6" offensive line. They're going to look like an NFL offensive line. I want to see if our athleticism on defense can bother them. Or are they going to just push us around and get 4 and 5 yards of carry like we just did to Eastern Washington? So I think we'll know that early. And also we're going to have to play a lot of guys because, look what they did to UIW. This was a 17-17 game, and then they just steamrolled them in the fourth quarter. So, it's a difficult task. I think we're going to learn a lot about ourselves and see how far away we are. But offensively, what we've been doing, it's not going to cut it if you're going to beat these guys. We got to be better. We got to be able to hit some explosive plays in the passing game. I think we have some good receivers. I think we just got to get them in space. We play. We can do some things historically. Now we haven't done it so far this year, but that can give Missouri Valley teams some problems as far as we can throw the football around. And we got to be able to do that if we're going to have a chance to win. But look, excited to get those guys here at Hammond. And who knows? Let's get out there and play. And you never know till you spot the ball. And let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is to the Lion Nation out there, you got to get there. You got to get in the stadium. You got to support the team.
Well, here's the deal, Robbie. If you're ever going to play these guys in the playoffs, the problem is you're probably never going to get to play them at home. So there's your chance. They're here. If
you want to correlate it to something else, if you're, if you're Mississippi State or Ole Miss and Georgia's coming into town as the number one team, Vaughn Hemingway and Oxford is going to be packed to the gills. Everyone's going to want to be in that stadium. Well, if you're a Lion fan, this is the same correlation. I know it's a different chance. Football. Yeah, this is number one's coming to town. And, you may not see it that way all the time, but it's the exact same reference to the Bulldogs going to Oxford or Alabama going to South Carolina. Those teams, those fans, that's a wanted ticket. And this needs to be a wanted ticket on Saturday for a team like this coming to Strawberry Stadium.
Well, the one thing that the fans are one thing. Obviously you got to get hyped up about it. We hope that happens and guys are hanging off the rafters on the light poles and all that and making noise and just being Lion Nation. But the team has got to this is another game against a good opponent. You can't go into it, it's number one, we got to play differently because it's number one. They're going to put their uniforms on the same way they do here. And I think when they get out there, they're going to realize, hey, we can compete with these guys. We've played SEC teams and FBS teams and good opponents before. So that's not going to be any different. You just have to treat it like, this is, again, it's a professional business trip. But you're playing at home and you go out there and you just, stack play after play. You try to win each play and not have any breakdowns. Because what happens is, I think you saw at Tulane, you saw a little bit at Southern Miss, you're playing up, big crowd, chance to play on a little bit bigger stage. And, we hit a guy out of bounds, playing with effort, but you get your hair on fire too much and you make a mistake, you throw a pick six, you whiff on a block because your eyes and your head are somewhere else, because the environment has been too big. Now, when we've had big home games in the past, especially under Frank Selfo, we've channeled that into focus, especially when we played Villanova and we played even Nichols, big environment against Nichols and Idaho, those type of environments, we played well at home. So hopefully that happens on Saturday and we put our best foot forward and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, guys, great job as always. We appreciate it. We appreciate our guests today coming on, and we look forward to this Saturday as the Lions welcome the number one ranked South Dakota State Jackrabbits to Strawberry Stadium for the Lions and the Rabbits. 6 o'clock kickoff at Strawberry Stadium. Get out there and support the team. It's going to be a great day at Strawberry Stadium, and we look forward to seeing everybody out there this Saturday for what should be a great football game between these two universities. That'll do it for us. For Mark Willoughby, Alan Waddell, I'm up the road saying good night. Thanks for listening to the Southeastern Sports Podcast. We'll talk to you next week.
Later.